Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Film Haven Reviews. I'm your host Sawyer as always, and today we have a very special couple announcements. There's actually so many different announcements that I don't even know where to start with. So for one, we are starting a new sideshow. It's kind of like a bit of a collaboration, a bit of a crossover show, if you will, with Matt from the movie Podium.
Hey, what's up, guys?
And so, as you've heard me on several different episodes, I've been on their podcast a couple times, and so we've been talking, and we were kind of brainstorming an idea about doing a sideshow where we talk about movie news and news for basically a monthly news episode where we talk about the news from the month, and then of course in this episode, because it is Oscar season and the nominations just came out last Thursday, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to start the show and kind of break down the Oscar nominations and see what we think and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the Oscars are coming out by I think March the 2nd, 3rd,
yeah, third.
yeah, second or third. So I figure maybe we'll push the next episode to like March 4th or whenever the next weekend is, so that we can. That way we could just basically go from what do we think about the nominations to what do we think about the winners. So we're going, it's a visual podcast, which is different for me. The movie Podium is usually all visible and you can find them on YouTube. And Matt, if you want to talk about what the movie Podium is real fast, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I'll give a quick plug. So we're a bunch of friends from our childhood. We've been friends for almost 30 years. So quite a long time. We started this podcast about 2 years ago or so. And so what we do is we collectively choose a movie to watch each week. We get together and talk about it. And then it's kind of like a book club.
But for movies.
For movies.
It's a running joke. If you watch the show, you'll know. They all jump him when he says, but for movies.
So he didn't interrupt me by accident there.
Right. Yeah. That was on purpose.
Yeah, and so like he said, we mainly hang out on YouTube visually, and also we're on Instagram, kind of on TikTok, but mostly YouTube and Instagram. You can also find us on Patreon and at themoviepodium.net for any fun gear like my shirt that I have to plug.
No, that's perfect.
But, yeah.
I need a shirt just like that. I've actually got one. My parents made me one, but it's on the back.
Oh, that's cool.
So we got a lot to cover today, and so we're just going to kind of blow through this a little bit. So just to let you know a little bit of kind of like the table of contents of the show real fast, we're going to talk about the top stories of this month, and then we're going to talk about kind of this section I really want to do since I do a lot of horror movies and I like a lot of horror stuff. And there's always, I guess horror is just like a really big genre right now in general, bigger than it's pretty much ever been. And so as far as mainstream, so there's always like really like headliney horror movies coming out every month. So I figure we do a section called Horror Watch. So we'll do that real fast, and then we'll get into the Oscars. We'll look at all the nominations, most of them, and kind of break those down. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've got the top stories for this week, or this month, I should say. And the first one that really stuck out to me was from Empire Magazine. Robert Eggers is going to be writing and directing a Labyrinth sequel at TriStar. And on top of that, of course, a lot of you may know already because it's been around for a couple days at least. He's also directing a new movie called Werewolf with a U, Werewolf, which of course is very Robert Eggers of him. And I'm really excited for both of those things. Not really so much the Labyrinth, but the Werewolf for sure. Especially if you've listened to my podcast, you know that I'm always in search of a good werewolf movie because I normally don't like them very much. Even though I like the concept of a werewolf, They don't really, a lot of movies just like don't really get it right. There's a lot of really mediocre and bad werewolf movies. So if anyone's going to do it right, it's going to be Eggers.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, he's kind of the horror king right now. Like,
oh yeah,
his debut movie was The Witch. How crazy is that, right? I mean, you went from that, and I still haven't seen Nosferatu, which shame on me.
Yeah,
but I take it he's going to be in that same wheelhouse, right? Same era, same dark, gray tones. I think he's going to probably knock out a park, right?
Yeah, he sticks to history, which I love as someone who loves history a lot. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that. And I really love the way he approaches history. He takes the mythology around it, around the time period and within their kind of local ethnicities, and he makes them hyper realistic while also keeping the mythology alive. So it's like it's supernatural, but it's also hyper realistic, and so it's like almost even better than living in the time. Because of course werewolves weren't real, but werewolves, they thought that werewolves were real. So what if we had this, like, you could put you there and make you feel like you're in the time, and then werewolves really are real, which is like doubly awesome. So I think if anyone can do it, it's going to be him.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll be honest, I kind of am excited for Labyrinth. As a kid, I actually really liked the movie. And I mean, I just love the concept of, like, you know, she had 13 hours to solve some puzzle, and she wished her baby brother gone. Having kids, I'm like, man, I have a feeling my youngest daughter is going to be trying to get rid of her older brothers. We actually
100%.
talked about doing a next month, maybe, I think, and maybe February, doing like a nostalgic childhood, and maybe doing Labyrinth as
that would
one
be
of
great.
those movies. Yeah, so I'm kind of curious how he's gonna take, because kind of like what you said, like he can take a time period or even just a frame of mind and really enter that world or realm. And so I'm kind of curious what he's gonna do with that. I did see that Brian Henson, I think Jim Henson's son is going to be involved in it too, I believe. So that,
which makes sense because Labyrinth had all the puppets and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess Jim Henson maybe had something to do with that. That would make sense.
Yep.
So I liked Labyrinth. Don't get me wrong. It's really just the 40-year-old sequel. I mean, Beetlejuice was actually pretty good. I didn't mind that.
It was entertaining. Like,
Tim Burton did a good job.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't think you needed a sequel, and I know we've talked about it. Like, same with Goonies. Like, you don't need.
Oh,
these.
Please don't.
Right. Exactly. It's like, but in a way, it's kind of an afterthought. So my kids just watched Aladdin, and and then they watched Aladdin: Return of Jafar, which was just straight to home video. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, it doesn't. In real conversations, it doesn't take away anything from the first one. Like, I still think the first one's amazing. Second one, horrible. So, like, it's fine. I mean, it's a crowd pleaser, so
that's
whatever.
True.
If people can't think of a good idea anymore.
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, you it's not going to take anything away, because in the end, if you really just love the original, you're just going to watch the original, and you're going to say forget the new one.
Yeah, so, and it's Goonies for life.
Yeah, right? Goonies for life. That's right.
Never say die.
Never say die. But so that's a good point. Like, I think that Robert Eggers is like, if anyone's going to do a Labyrinth sequel, he's going to do it, and he's going to be weird, and it's going to be interesting, his take on that. Although I just got a feeling that he himself maybe is a little apprehensive to do something.
True.
It's partly in the modern world, right? Like at the beginning, Jennifer Connelly's like in the modern world, and he just recently was making waves in an interview saying he's never going to do a modern movie because he says the idea of shooting a scene where someone's looking at a smartphone makes him want to die. It's just like he just loves history. He just thinks it's so, I guess, tacky to do modern stuff, but I mean, if he likes that, he likes it.
Sure.
But anyway, on to the next thing. This one's kind of fun, a little bit for the horror people. We got from Variety, the Toxic Avenger reboot is coming to theaters this year. So apparently it was kind of back and forth on production, and they weren't sure the talks and stuff like that. And I didn't even know about it until recently, but the cast list is pretty crazy.
It's awesome.
Peter Dinklage being the Toxic Avenger, which is cool.
Yep.
Elijah Wood and Kevin Bacon. So Kevin Bacon's had some interesting roles lately. He was in Maxine this year, and that was a really cool role for him. He was kind of that sleazy, hitman-y kind of like fixer guy, and it worked for him, honestly. I thought he was doing good.
Yeah, he's great. And it's funny because the original, I mean, is obviously such a huge cult classic, but it didn't have any big name actors. I mean, it was a trauma movie, right?
Oh, it's a trauma movie, and those movies are, they're known for not being very like star-studded. But what's funny is a lot of famous people, I couldn't name them offhand, but a lot of famous people get their start in trauma, where they'll even just working on the films. Like they're like, oh, I learned how to be a cinematographer from there. So I think it's Charlie Kaufman, I think is his name, or Larry Kaufman. I can't remember his name. The guy who writes most of them. I think I have it here. Lloyd Kaufman.
Kaufman, yeah, that's right.
I've heard interviews with him where he's like, people never talk about me when they're talking about their life growing up and learning movies and how they went through like 3 of my movies in order to learn the film industry. But whatever, he's a very bitter man. But anyway, I'm excited for it. Oh yeah, for sure.
Me too.
I've actually never seen a trauma movie, which is crazy.
Really?
It's one of those things. I know. I've never seen
Toxic Avenger.
I have
Whoa.
not.
Oh,
so
man,
it's exciting. It's a good opportunity for me. I mean, I might. Who knows? I might watch a bunch of them before I get there. I know that they're very of a certain taste. Yes.
I think I saw one. Was it called Tromeo and Juliet?
Yes, that one's somewhat recent, right? It was like within the last like 6 or 7 years.
No. I saw it. It was probably about 20 years ago.
I have heard of that one. There's usually a lot of bodily fluids involved.
There's a lot
from
of
what
that.
I remember. Yeah, like a lot of people throwing up and stuff like that.
It was like a very NC-17 version of Romeo and Juliet in many ways.
It's like weirdly low budget, but like, and they also, but they're like leaning into it. Yeah. And it's like to the point of artistic. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I'm excited for that. Really great cast list there. On the next thing, we've got Devil in a Long Sea. This comes from The Guardian. Long delayed DiCaprio Scorsese serial killer film Devil in a White City is back on track. So I remember, like many years ago, I would just scroll IMDb and look at like Leonardo DiCaprio or Scorsese and just look at their upcoming projects. And being a big fan of true crime and obviously serial killers and stuff like that, I know the guy that I can't think of his name right now. H.H. Holmes in his Murder Castle. And I've actually listened to an audio book. I've listened to like half of that book, and it is. I was
going to ask if you'd read it.
So it's real Boros Noro for a while, and some people might not agree with me on that, but a lot of the book is about the Chicago's World Fair.
Yeah,
and
the
so,
engineer behind it, right?
Yeah, so they talk about the architecture and all that kind of stuff, and I was just thinking about this because I watched The Brutalist last night, and we'll get into that, obviously my thoughts on that later, but I like visually a movie about an architect. But to listen to or read a book about an architect, it just doesn't hit the same, I don't think. And so I've tried to get back into it a couple times, and I just like start falling asleep. So whenever it gets to H.H. Holmes eventually in the book, which I think is probably about almost halfway through, then I'll really probably lock in. But I've listened to a lot of podcasts and watched documentaries and stuff. It's a very compelling story.
Yeah, I haven't. So I remember when it first came out, maybe 2003 or something like that, early 2000s, and I was in high school, college around that time, and so like I remember it was getting passed around as one of those books, like Fight Club of its time,
right?
And it was like the cool thing to be reading that book, and so, but I actually never got to read it. So, like, but I know what it's about because I had a couple of friends who did. Does the engineer and the architect, I mean, the guy who kind of constructs the World Fair, is there a relationship with the killer?
No.
Or is it just the same time frame and the same location, basically?
It's basically the guy is setting the scene, and he's kind of showing you how it was possible for H.H. Holmes to do what he did during that time. If you know what Chicago was like during that time, you know how transitory people were. That's one of the big things is that they're, especially these young women, this was like kind of a liberation time as industrialization really hits home in the post-Civil War era. And you've got these women who were really poor in the farms, and they're just like, they grew up and they were like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the city and we're going to make a life. Yeah. So they go to the city and they meet this like kind of flim-flam man. So he's like, not only is he a serial killer, but he's also a con man to the extreme. And so he's doing all these insurance scams and all this kind of stuff. But he's one of those guys, the way they describe him is like, you walk in and there'd be like debtors, like lenders that are like wanting money from him. And they would walk in so mad. And then they would like, he would immediately be like, oh, come over here. And then they'd like talk to him and be like, hey, how you doing? And then by the time that they walked out, they didn't even remember what they were there for.
Well,
like
it's kind of, that sounds, I mean, I don't know which role. I mean, I assume that would be DiCaprio's role, but that sounds a lot like Catch Me If You Can.
Yes, actually, that's very true. And you see here, I mean, I don't see the mustache on that picture. I don't know if this is really from that, but it looks like it would be. It's about no. There's cars
it's a
in
set
there.
of the Killers.
Yes, Killers the Flower
Killers
Moon.
The Flower Moon. Yeah.
I was gonna say that the car there doesn't. There wouldn't be cars in the 1880s. Right. But anyway, it's been a long time coming, and so I'm really excited to see what they do with it. And Scorsese and Leo back together is pretty cool too. I think we can all get down with that. So next thing on the list is Ridley Scott is making a new Alien, and alongside Fede Alvarez making a new Romulus or a sequel to Romulus. And so this Screen Rant article kind of goes into detail about how maybe this is like they can kind of feed off of each other. Like the best thing for the Romulus sequel or his ending, he's possibly doing a third movie in the David trilogy, as some people call it. You know, the character from Prometheus, the android made by Michael Fassbender. So basically, he never finished David's story. So for a while, he actually was planning on doing that third movie, but he got distracted or it got lost or whatever. And now he's saying that he's doing some. They're not saying what it is, but some alien project. So it may be that one or it may be new.
Interesting. Now, I can't remember. I've seen both of them, and I really, really like them.
Prometheus is great.
It is. I can't remember what happens at the end of the second one. How did they leave it off?
Man, I couldn't tell you either. I watched it once, like in 2018.
It's been a while. And I know. I'm racking
people don't like that one as much. I was fine with it.
Because they come back to that planet, and it's just him, right? And he,
there's him and he has like a different personality or something. There's like two of him or something like that. Like there's some weird thing with that.
Been a while.
I know it's been a long time, but regardless, it'll be a good reason to go back and watch through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I did want to. Yeah, I wanted to take one quote too. Yes, because Romulus was so great, and we'll get into that later because it did get one nomination from the Oscars. But
wow,
I had a quote here. The cliffhanger for Andy and Rain's future after Alien Romulus is what will happen to them once they get on the new planet. They expect it to be the paradise for them, but Alvarez has already teased that this is likely not the case, given the expectation that they will encounter xenomorphs and other forms of alien life. So Alien Romulus 2 will have to explain how that is possible. And so Ridley Scott's movie focusing on David could be a great way to tie those things together. So there's some plot holes that need to be addressed in the new Alien movie, or the new Romulus movie, and Ridley Scott can kind of do that. And it's also worth noting that Ridley Scott was a very major producer of Alien Romulus. He was very involved in the production of that movie, and so he's obviously knows what's going on. He's got some stuff in mind, and although I haven't seen Gladiator 2 yet, I
have.
Yo, you've seen that one, yeah?
I guess I can kind of talk about it. I don't know spoilers, but I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would, to be honest.
Cool.
And I loved the first Gladiator.
It's great.
Again, impressionable 10 to 15-year-old me, like,
same.
oh yeah, badass. This guy, comes back from revenge. He's fighting.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because the second one, kind of what we were just talking about with like sequels. I'm like, this one didn't need a sequel at all.
Yeah.
And they tie it in fine. Like the way they tie it in is okay. But, and honestly, it's almost the same exact story, just a different person reliving through the Gladiator moments.
Amazing.
And I still enjoyed it. Like it still was fun. I mean, it's not
like popcorn.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, popcorn entertainment.
I thought it was good. Did Ridley Scott direct it or just produce it?
He directed it.
Okay, that makes sense because it felt like. I mean, again, it felt like I was watching Gladiator all over.
Yeah,
again.
A lot of
people. It was enjoyable.
A lot of people liked it. A lot of people said that it was fine and that they felt like Ridley Scott's getting lazy. There was a lot of talk about Ridley Scott getting lazy. He had a director of photography that was complaining about how he's using like a million different cameras and like he's kind of just he's utilizing the studio so much that he's forgetting the craft, I guess is what the guy's saying. But he's also like 86 years old, and I'm like, okay, I hope I'm doing that at 86. If I'm making Gladiator 2 at 86, I'm doing good. So I'm giving him some grace on that.
Oh, and it's a sequel. I mean, again, it's not you're not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of moments in the movie that are straight references. There's the exact quotes, like what you do now echoes in eternity, like all those
Right.
things. They lean into it. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could see where they're saying he's lazy, but it's also a sequel. So what do you
Yeah.
expect, right?
Yeah, and it's bigger and bolder, and there's just crazy stuff, and some of the stuff that you would think that wasn't real, like sharks in the Coliseum. I mean, they really did
Yeah.
do mock sea
Yeah.
battles in the Coliseum. That's a real thing that happened.
That was a question mark I had. So that's
They,
interesting.
they really did do that. So a lot of times you'd be surprised in some historical movies, the stuff that seems the most unrealistic is actually
Yeah.
true. But obviously some of that stuff was not. That's one of the reasons why I think I held off on watching it was because I already knew. I love Roman history, so I already saw by the emperors. I was like, he's doing Caracalla and Geta dirty, and I
Yeah.
just don't know if I could do this. But I'll digress because we'll go into a huge rant about that. So moving on. So I had an extra little thing that just popped up today. This is some new news. There's a new Resident Evil movie in the makes, but it's done by Zach Krieger. I'm not sure how to say his name. It was the guy who did
okay.
Barbarian, and Barbarian is an incredible movie, especially if you didn't know what.
Great horror.
Yeah, if you didn't know what you were like, I watched Barbarian completely. Like Allie and I,
Same.
did not know anything, just went into it dry, and it was an incredible experience. And
I
there's
had no idea what to expect.
every 30 or 20 or 30 minutes, the movie just takes a complete like left angle, and then again and again, and it just keeps doing that until the movie's over. Great film, great like kind of use of horror tropes and kind of taking taking people's expectations and just warping it over and over again.
Because the trailer leads you to think like, okay, something's happening, right? Like,
Right.
But you assume it's the person because it's the
Bill
Airbnb
Skarsgård
person.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, he's gonna be the bad guy. And then, the turns that it takes.
Yeah,
I
he gets
completely
yeeted in the
agree,
first
dude.
20 minutes, and the whole time you're sitting there thinking like, is he not like?
Yeah.
Which it honestly too on its own right, it kind of makes those situations kind of interesting. Like people could be in that
agreed.
situation, and it's like
Yep.
you can easily see how someone's
For sure.
kind of reactions or actions being creepy and being not creepy at the same time. Because depending on what
Agreed.
perspective you're looking at. If you know that this person's innocent, then everything they're doing makes sense. But if you
Right.
think that they're not innocent, then everything they're doing makes
Anything
sense
can
too.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that's really cool that he's going to be doing a Resident Evil reboot.
He's doing a Resident Evil reboot.
think
That would
it'd
be
be
a good
cool.
person for that. And
Yeah.
he's trying to go back to the 96 original game. Like he's trying to take it
great.
bare bones, which is like
Yeah, because the movies, the series were like just corny action flicks by the end of it, right? I mean,
yeah,
there's
it's
a lot
Paul
of special
W.
effects
Thomas Anderson, or he does all those crazy movies like that. And his one good movie that I really liked is Event Horizon, but the first Resident Evil. Oh, Event Horizon! You should put that on a list for like space horror if you guys ever do that for a
cool.
theme.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So the first Resident Evil, even though it was kind of smaller, it was still pretty big and crazy and a little overblown because you're going into the underground of the Umbrella Corporation and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It'd be nice to just have a mansion and you're just going through
And you're
and being
like,
scared. You know,
seeing
like
all the mutants and all
Yeah.
the crazy stuff.
that's awesome. That's all you need.
Basic. Agreed.
Very basic. And if you look at Barbarian, right, like although there was the turns and stuff like that, the beginning, that first 20 minutes was honestly a masterclass in building up tension. Like when by the time she's walking down those stairs, you're like,
you
oh
have
my
no
God,
idea.
oh my God.
Yep.
Like
Yep,
it is
go
crazy.
home.
I had friends
Get out
that
of
like
there.
literally wanted to walk out. They were like, this is too intense for me. I can't do it. Of course, they
that's
relieve that tension in like 2 minutes after that, but still. But yeah, I thought that was cool. And then one of the cool things about this too is that 4 different studios are trying to win his version. So he has actually shopped this thing, and people are trying to get it. Warner Brothers and Netflix are both in the running for this. So it's a hot commodity. So it must be pretty good. So next, let's go on to our next section, our next little subcategory, which is going to be the horror watch. I need some sound for that, but
Yeah, love it.
the horror watch. And so this, what I wanted to do with this is just kind of have like, let's look at the horror movies that came out this month and see what they're doing. So I'm going to show their posters, and then I also put their Metacritic and their user scores on there too, so you can kind of see what's going on. Wolfman, I know you guys you've probably been hearing about this. The trailers have been everywhere. 5.9 user, 51 Metascore. So honestly, pretty consistent at least.
Did you see it?
I have not seen it yet. I actually haven't seen any of these yet, and I'm like,
no, I haven't either. But that's cool. I'm actually kind of excited to have some sort of frame of reference going into seeing any of these movies, because I saw the trailers of Wolfman. I'm like, I could see it. Like I'm sure it'll be. I'm sure Robert Eggers will do it a lot better. But I'm curious. So like, this is cool.
Yeah, and my thing about this movie is that I love the director, I always get his name wrong, Leah Whannell. He's the guy who did Upgrade. He directed Upgrade, which is an incredible movie from 2018. And he also did The Invisible Man, the one with, what's her name, from Mad Men. And, God, why can't I remember her name? Elizabeth something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I know.
I'm usually great with names, but I'm just like blanking. But anyway, she was. I thought Invisible Man was incredible. I thought, I mean, like really good way to flip the script on a classic story. And so when I hear Wolfman coming out, I'm like, okay, I trust him.
Yeah.
And then I saw the trailer, and I was like, this looks pretty mid, and I'm upset. I want to give it a chance. And then the reviews came out, and it was pretty much everyone being like, "Yep, this is pretty mid," and I'm just like, "No."
I mean, when I saw those Metascores, what did it say? 5.7.
It's a 50. Yeah, it's a 51 actually.
A 51. Okay, and
a
5.9.
Yeah, 5.9 on the user. So I've seen a lot of reviews on this. People have been talking about it because it was the first horror movie. It really was like the first horror movie of the year. And the practical effects. If you are a practical effects fan, it's a very grounded film, which makes it a little boring. So it's kind of a small movie, and apparently the characters aren't super likable, so you got some of that stuff going on. But as far as like if you're going into a creature feature movie looking for the transitions, looking for the practical effects, it's actually pretty cool. It's a good take on that werewolf because he's kind of engaging in this legacy of werewolf movies, especially the major ones, which are all about the transitions and all about the practical effects. And in fact, the Benicio del Toro Wolfman movie got completely slaughtered by critics because it went CGI. It went CGI and everyone was like, what is this? Even though if you look back, a lot of people defend that movie now. But still, at the time, it was a big deal that they were using CGI and not practical effects. So I don't know. I'm still going to watch it eventually, of course, because I'm going to do my roundup. But I think one of the reasons why I haven't seen any of these movies is because I just watched a billion movies for the roundup, and I just need I need to cool it for a second.
Sure.
So the next movie we got is Presence. And this movie is kind of like, actually, I have these pulled up too, just because I know you might not know like even what these movies are about. So we'll read the IMDb bios. A family becomes. Yeah, go on.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I didn't realize, so this was directed by Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, I know, which is really interesting. But yeah, it's about a family becomes convinced they are not alone after moving into their home in the suburbs. So it's pretty like bare bones. And of course, Steven Soderbergh has like a billion movies, and I mean, Traffic, Aaron Brockovich, I mean, so many movies. But it's got pretty good reviews here. We got 78 Metascore, so really high on the critics, and then 6.7, not bad either on the user. Although I will say what that kind of is saying to me is that it's more artistic, which means that and if you see the trailers, you can kind of tell. It reminds me a lot of Ghost Story, the David Lowery movie. I don't know if you saw that one, A Ghost Story from 2017. It's very artsy and it's very divisive. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people are like, this isn't even a horror movie. And there's a whole scene where Rooney Mara eats a pie for 5 minutes. Like she literally sits down and eats a pie. Like you just watch her eat a pie. And people just hate that scene. But it reminds me of that because it's got all these like really wide angle lenses in the house. It's very like point of view, like slow panning into each room. It seems very atmospheric. So I feel like for some people this is going to be a great scary movie that's like it's spooky, but not in a way that's like super like body horror, bloody kind of slashery. So some people this might be perfect for. Next movie, this one now, I don't know, most people probably haven't even heard of this one, but it's called Grafted. It actually came out today or it's coming out very soon on streaming. Now, what I want to say about this right here is you got a 5.8 user and a 58 Metascore. There's only 4 critics, so keep that in mind. But I will say that is usually a kind of good sign, actually.
Yeah.
When you got the critics and the users in the same level, it means that what you're seeing is what you're going to get. There's not going to be a lot of like, oh, this movie was actually really good, and everybody was off on this. It seems to me like the movie is going to be small, low budget, but interesting. Maybe with a unique. Actually, the premise is kind of unique. I'll read it right here.
Yeah, I was going to say, read it.
So IMDb says a bright but socially awkward exchange student takes her craving for popularity to horrifying heights. Yeah. So reading into it too, I think she's like, so she's a student at a university, and she works on like the science stuff. And so she's like, it's grafted as like skin grafting. And so if you see the poster here, she's like between two different people, and she's ripping out. So there's a French film called Raw that is very good. I did a review on a long time ago, and it's kind of giving Raw, where she kind of starts to become a cannibal, but it's like a weird coming of age university movie where she goes to the university and she's feeling out of place, but as like a hazing ritual at this like veterinary, I think it's vet school. There's like a hazing ritual where she has to eat raw meat, and she eats it, and she's like,
oh, this is good.
This is actually pretty good. And so the rest of the movie is her kind of like, and there's a great scene where she bites a dude's finger off, and it's just like, whoa. It's the way that it's filmed. But anyway, that's a good movie. It kind of reminds me of this. So, yeah, it'll be on streaming. And then this one, The Damned. Now, I saw this one was on AMC. I was going to maybe see it just on a lark one night. But it's got a 64 Metascore and a 5.9 users. So from what I've heard of this, I've seen some reviews, is that a lot of people are saying that it has like the great kind of, has the good elements of a folk horror. It's in I think it's in Iceland, which is really cool.
That's cool.
Let's see. I'll read the description.
Yeah.
A 19th century widow has to make an impossible choice when, during an especially cruel winter, a foreign ship sinks off the coast of her Icelandic fishing village. So I actually love that premise because I went to Iceland a few years ago, and I went up to the northwestern fjords, and it is real spooky up there in a way. And there's a lot of Icelandic sorcery. I went to a museum for witchcraft and sorcery in Iceland, and their sorcery is really cool, and it's really weird. And there's stuff like necropants that we'll have to talk about that off air because it is not not safe for work, but it is a very interesting kind of lore. And so if they get spooky with it, if they get supernatural with it, I'm down. But from what I've heard, the ending is kind of anticlimactic, which is kind of a chronic issue. Right? Yeah, it's a chronic issue for a lot of those kind of movies where they have a really slow burn. If you got a slow burn, you're doing atmosphere, you really got to stick the landing, or you're just going to be forgotten, which is probably what's going to happen here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of movies. I think that happens with so many movies where they have such a cool concept and they set the table so well, but they don't know how to land the plane. We see it all the time in movies when we do our reviews. I'm like, oh, this could have been great. And then they don't know how to land it.
Yeah, so I give a lot of movies grace for that, because I like whenever that does happen to me, like as a viewing experience, I used to get really upset, and I'm like, if you can't end a movie well, then you're not a good movie. And now I'm like, there's so many movies like that I'm just like, it was a fun ride. You don't have to end it crazy.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
It's just one of these movies where it's such a slow burn that you're like, you really need it.
Yeah, you invested the time to watch this, and you're like, all right, I just put an hour and a half or 2 hours into this.
Yeah.
I need something to pay off, right?
Yeah, if it's really fun and then it doesn't end well, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice actually. Like I thought the ending was super rushed. It was like there was like a million villains, and so they just like had to have their end scene. Monica Bellucci was like, she just like came in and just left, and it was like, we got her.
Yeah, what was the point of that again?
Yeah,
could have just left that out, honestly. But
her whole character pretty much. Yeah. So, but the ride was so fun that I didn't really care. I was like, sure,
agree,
that's fine. Okay, moving on. Next movie. This one's actually been making some waves. Companion. I think it comes out in just a couple days. It's not out yet.
Oh, I already have an idea what this is about.
Yeah. So 7.2 user and 76 Metascore, which is pretty good. And it's got Jack
for a horror.
Jack Quaid in it, which is really fun. We love Jack Quaid. If you watch The Boys or what other stuff? Oh, it's Scream 5. He was in there. He's Dennis Quaid's son.
Awesome.
His mother is also very famous. Obviously, I can't remember who it was, but it is someone who's like, oh, that's his mother. And then Sophie Thatcher is in it, who's obviously on the cover here, and she's starting to get really trendy. She was in Heretic, and she was awesome in that. Obviously, Hugh Grant being the most awesome in that movie, but she was great in that. So definitely like. That was a good enough performance in that movie for me to like kind of recognize her now and everything. I'm like, oh, there's Sophie Thatcher. Okay, got you. So
yeah, and I mean from that it looks like I assume she's some sort of AI or somebody like almost real genius turned creepy and weird maybe.
if it is like that, then I'd say it's a little old hat by this point. But at the same time, the way that they're doing, it's feeling like the movie Fresh, which I really liked. Where it has this kind of like tongue-in-cheek kind of vibe where it's a little funny, like it's dark. Oh, it even says here on the genres, dark comedy, psychological thriller.
Well, honestly, it kind of reminds me of one we're going to talk about here in a minute, but The Substance.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Very tongue-in-cheek.
So the it doesn't really tell you much on the bio, but I'll read it anyway. A billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. So, okay.
No idea.
I think they're trying to keep it vague, which is great. I think in the trailer, she's like being compelled to put her hand over a flame by Jack Quaid, who's being real nice and like he's being like her boyfriend or her like lover or whatever. And he's like making her do it. And she's not, it looks like she's maybe feeling it, but she can't move. But she's doing it. So I don't know if it's so much of an AI as it is some kind of coercive control on like a biological level. So maybe she's a real person and she's being captured in some way, which is why it reminds me of the movie Fresh. So, but yeah, that's it for the horror watch. We did that. I think there's some pretty interesting movies, and most of them actually, at least 2 or 3 were in the green for Metacritic scores. So
yeah, that's exciting. I definitely want to check some of those out.
Yeah, considering the fact that last year started with Night Swim, I think there's a much better start. Night Swim was on most people's like top 10 horrible of the year for 2024. So I think that was my number one, my lowest for my roundup.
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say on your how many did you rank again?
Oh God, it was like 20 something, 22 or 23. It was a marathon.
That was a long one.
My throat was so sore. I mean, 2.5 hours of just talking. Yeah. We're going to, speaking of which, part of what this is too, for this kind of sideshow is to break these down month by month. And maybe even, could even do like a quarterly, instead of like a whole year roundup, would be like first quarter horror roundup for that way we break it up and it's not a 2.5 hour episode.
I think that would be great because I mean this is cool going over this each month. Yeah. But then there's no payoff. So I mean what would be cool is we actually watch some of these. Right. And that way on the quarterly episode we can be like, oh well, hey, that sounded good and it was good, or wow, that was a real dud.
Quarterly review, and then what would be cool too, and we're just gonna brainstorm here live on the podcast. What would be cool too is if you would have like your ranking and my ranking, and then we'll see how that fit. So you give your out of 10, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, but I'm definitely down.
What everybody's really here for, obviously, is the Oscar nominations, which is the biggest news of the week and of the month. And so I've actually made a big list here of all of the Oscar nominations. I think we decided, here. So let's get into it. The first 10 here are Anora, and I've actually got their little posters here. So we have Anora, which is which I've seen that one at least. I've seen 5 out of the 10 here. Then The Brutalist, which I saw last night. And then A Complete Unknown. Have you seen that one yet?
I haven't, and I really, really want to see that. That's probably number 1 on my list of these that I haven't seen that I want to.
Right. Yeah, I'm down to watch it. I like a good biopic, and I've heard that he nails it pretty well. So it didn't get a lot in the Golden Globes, which is interesting. So I wonder if that might be a telltale sign for what happens in the Oscars. But
so I've seen 3 tried watching one and gave up real fast. And the rest I want to see.
Yeah, that's just fine. We're kind of looking at them, and then we've got a little bit later to review them and talk about them and see if they deserve being getting the nominations or getting the wins that they got. So then we have a Conclave. Ralph Fiennes. Did you see this one?
I did.
Yeah,
I did, and I liked it. I think the acting is top notch. I think it's an A+ acting. I mean, he might win. I could see him winning.
You think Ralph Fiennes might win this?
Maybe. If Timothy's not going to, I could see him winning because he is amazing in it. I will say it's a kind of a boring, slow movie.
Right. Pope stuff.
I don't think it'll. I don't think it'll win Best Picture or anything like that. I think it's an old hat, as you mentioned earlier. From a topic standpoint, it's kind of boring.
Right. There have been some Pope movies out the last few years too. There was like the two popes with what's his name, Anthony Hopkins, and so it's kind of has been worn out a little bit.
Yeah. So I will say the acting's great and take it for what it is, but I wouldn't say it's Best Picture.
Right. Okay, and then we got Dune 2, which you said you've seen at least half of it, right?
Yeah, so with dad duties and staying up super
of
late,
course,
and being almost 3 hour. I think it's like a runtime of 2:53.
Yeah, it's pretty much 3 hours. Yeah.
I'm about halfway through, and I love what I've seen so far.
Yeah. I had a really interesting kind of journey with Dune 2 because I really loved Dune 1. Like I really enjoyed that movie.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean it was incredible. And to be fair, I've read half of Dune. Or I've listened to it on audiobook.
Hey,
that's
me too.
it was that half. So I was like, oh, this is great. And then I didn't know what was going to happen in the second one. Yeah. So I was like kind of surprised by the pacing of it for a movie. You haven't gotten to the end, but for a movie that is 3 hours long, somehow it still felt rushed. I was like, man, I felt like there was more to do here. There's more stuff going on. But, I mean, there was a lot to get to. I mean, 3 hours I think is enough. So I don't know what – it's been a while since I watched it. I saw it when it came out. But I remember being I remember liking Dune 1 more. Even though Dune 2 – I can
see that so far.
Most people were saying it was a better movie. And for me, I'm just like, I just really like Dune 1. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I can't say I've finished it, so I don't have a full opinion, but I like the first one so much because it sets the table for everything else. And it's almost like you're in a world that you've never seen before. And so, you're
learning about the world.
Quite like it.
Yeah.
Like, it's somewhat like Star Wars, but a little different in a way.
It's a little based on Star Wars, I think, or whichever one came first is based on the other. I can't remember.
I think it's based on Star Wars, but in a way. But like, I would agree. I think the first one so far is better, but I'm kind of glad that it's getting some nominations because the filmmaking and the cinematography is just on a different level.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Lord of the Rings in the mid 2000s. How it's like started off. And there were some Oscar nominations, but by the third, by Return of the King, it won Best Picture. Yeah, I could see something similar happening with this. So
it was a Dune Messiah is coming out after this. And
that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and it was I think what was it 11? It won 11. I think Return of the King. Yeah, that's like insane. That was a lot of winning. They kind of saved a little for the end. I think they were kind of like, okay, you're coming out every year. Let's wait until the third movie.
Yeah, exactly. A little pat on the back afterwards. Yeah.
A well-deserved pat on the back, I will say.
Oh yeah, amazing. So that's kind of what the trajectory I feel with this. I think it's good, but I feel like it's Two Towers as opposed to Return of the Kings or Fellowship. So yeah,
it does kind of feel like that. And what I noticed too, and once again, you haven't finished it, but I think I like this about it too, is that the movies seemed mirrored. Like the first movie is coming from outside and going in. And the second movie is coming from the inside and going back. So there's like a cool bit. There's a bit of like a mirrored experience. There's even a couple of shots that you haven't gotten to that to me are like from what I remember of the first movie, I'm like, oh no, they're doing that shot like kind of in reverse. It's like the same shot from the first movie, which is really cool.
I'm excited. I'm gonna be watching that actually probably as soon as we get off. So nice.
Yeah, and so the next movie that we're going to be talking about, Emilia Perez,
is the one I tried to watch.
Right. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts on this movie, and it is the most Oscar-nominated film of the year, which I will definitely agree that is not. That's maybe a little overrated. Although I will have to say, now having finished the movie, I have to say that it is not as bad as a lot of people are saying, at least in my opinion. Now, everyone's got their vibe with this movie. A lot of people have some different ideas of what. So there's obviously, the kind of elephant in the room is that it's about a trans person. So depending on what your beliefs are on that, I mean, I have no problem with that, but some people
care less.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people that say that they're fine with trans people, it's like that they think that it's a little like what's the word? Like topical. It's like it's so topical that there may be, and I think this may be true, honestly, that the Academy is kind of like, we've been under some heat for the last few years for some of our choices. Maybe we should throw someone a bone, Emilia Perez.
And I totally think that's what it is. And that's my biggest issue in any movie that gets this kind of love from the Oscars.
Yeah.
Is that, like, it's almost like a hand-me-down. Like, I mean,
it feels bad. Like,
it's forced. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's forced. It doesn't. Those kind of topics are natural. Like, let it happen. Don't force it. Yeah. I had, honestly, the funniest part about this is I had no idea what this was about going into it. So, like, and again, I could care less what it's about. None of that bothers me.
Yeah,
but like I turned it on and I didn't know it was I didn't know it was a musical. I had no idea, and I was like, what's her name's in it? Selena Gomez. I'm like, Selena Gomez is in it. That's weird. And then I was like, oh, wait, it's all in Spanish.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this is just like. It has nothing to do. I could care less what the topic is.
Right.
Those two things combined, to me, was like, oh, I'm in for like a commitment that I don't think, mindset wise, that I can't.
I'm not
just
here
sit
for
here and listen to, like, none of that is what I was looking for, and so I can't necessarily say it's a bad movie because I seriously watched 10 minutes and I was like, I just can't do it. Like, I can't.
No, I'll tell you right now. I was watching with Allie, and I was like, all right, I've been hearing a lot of bad things, honestly, about this movie. Or at least a lot of things where people are saying, like, how is this movie the most decorated nominations?
I think that's what shocks me the most is that. Because I have seen a few of the movies, and I can't wait to see the other ones. But there's some of these that are just more unique. And not in the way that this one is. So this one is unique on purpose almost, right?
Yeah.
It's unique because it's a Spanish musical about a trans, a trans person.
Not just a trans woman, but also she is the leader of a cartel.
Yeah.
So she's the leader of a cartel and then transitions. So I was actually, getting into this, so I just, first and foremost, I did start watching it. And within the first 10 minutes, I was watching with Allie, and Allie goes, sorry, I can't do this. She's like, she said, you're going to have to turn this off and we're going to do something else. And I was like, I have to watch it.
I'm with her.
I was relegated to getting up early in the morning and in bed watching it on my phone with like AirPods and just like, okay, we're going to watch this.
That's so funny.
So I had to stick with it because I wanted to, it's the most nominated movie. I wanted to watch it before we did this episode. And so I'm like, what's the deal? And it is rough starting off. It really is because, like you said, it's just throwing everything at you. Like you're just supposed to know that this is what this movie is.
That was, yeah. And again, I had no idea it was in Spanish, and then I had no idea it was a musical, and it wasn't like there was no slow burn. I mean, it was straight into what was going on. I'm like, what is
the story? Boom.
Yeah, I had I couldn't keep up in a way that I didn't feel like there was no commitment to keeping up.
So after watching it and after reading up on it a little bit, I started to understand some of that. Well, for one, I will say that the musical aspect, some of the songs were just straight up dumb. Especially there's a couple of the English speaking. There's a couple English speaking songs, and there's one where they're talking about like doing like a sex change operation, and it is like it's almost offensive, and I don't mean that in the way of like in your face. It's just so like it's just silly the way they're like, he's gonna be a man now, he's gonna be a woman, and there's
come
you know,
on.
and we're gonna
so corny.
it's corny is what it is. I'm like, I have no problem with the sex change operation. It's just that the way that you're doing it is just not okay. So there's definitely things that I could point at and be like, that was dumb, that was dumb, that was dumb. But overall, once Emilia Perez, the character, actually once she transitions and she comes onto the screen about 30 or 40 minutes into the movie, that's when the movie really starts for me. And I was like, okay, she has really good screen presence. She was an interesting character. You've got this background of her being the cartel, like a cartel leader who's now a very feminine, like basically this man who has always had to be repressed his whole life. There's a line in it where he's talking about how I grew up in a pigsty, and the only way that you get out of a pigsty is by being the dirtiest pig in there. You got to be on the top. And so did a lot of murders, did a lot of things that were not good. And so now he's finally, which from my experience of people that I've known that it's been trans, like there is that moment where you finally become you and your like personality changes, like straight up. Like you just like, I have a friend whose brother transitioned, and it was like, they were really withdrawn. They were really quiet. And then boom, they just became like a super
able to lean into their own personality.
They got to become themselves, and so their personality is much more open. They're much more fun to talk to, and just much more personable, really. And so you kind of get that feeling with Emilia Perez, where she is now nicer. She's now like kind of being who she wants to be, but of course her past is coming back. Like the fact that you can't just forget the fact that you were a cartel leader. And that was one of the things. Okay, so I did like the movie overall. I'd say honestly 6.57 out of 10. Really not a terrible movie.
It's not bad.
Down the three that are the three that's knocking it off is one, the dumb songs. Honestly, some of the songs, they're so short. I liked that they were short. Like you'll just be in the middle of a dialogue and they'll just be like, oh, and it's like, okay, we're just going to be starting to do this now. But then they're done in like 60 seconds and you're like, okay, and then move on. But at that point, I'm like, just don't do it. Like just be a real movie. Don't be a musical. I'm not like a big fan of musicals, so that's maybe part of it. I'm just like, oh. But there were a couple songs that were
musicals
good.
Too. Yeah. That's what's funny. I dig musicals. I mean, I've been getting into musicals a lot more in the last maybe 5-10 years. And so like that, again, none of these one specific, and I don't care about subtitles, but like it was like everything at once.
Everything at once, yeah. It was just not prepared. Oh yeah. That is a great movie. But yeah, so the ending too is just really, it gets wild, which I was reading, and apparently it was almost like a telenovela. So it gets really soap opera-y. And so there are some cultural kind of influences that are happening there that I'm not privy to. And I think a lot of the mainstream aren't privy to. So maybe if you grew up in Mexico City, then you watch this movie and it feels a lot more normal. But for us who are coming into it, we're like, this is weird and I don't like it.
It's a culture shock. Yeah,
I think it really was. I truly, you put the culture shock on top of the fact that there's a bit of like a political kind of thing. It doesn't have to be that way, but it has been politicized.
It feels like it. Yep.
Right. Obviously, transgender stuff isn't really a politics thing, but it has become a politics thing because of politicians. So that's where that kind of, it feels really loaded because it's a unconventional movie on pretty much every level. And like you said, maybe on purpose. And the director has actually made a lot of movies that you might, recognize. But anyway, so we'll spend, 15 minutes talking about Emilia Perez, but the next movie I have not heard of. I'm Still Here. A lot of people
actually. I haven't heard of it either.
It doesn't actually even release in the U.S. until February 7th. So we couldn't even watch it if we wanted to.
Wow. That's crazy.
But the girl, the main actress here, she's up for an Oscar. So people like it.
Anything else? She looks familiar.
She looks kind of familiar. I don't have it pulled up. Let me see here. I'm Still Here.
Yeah.
It's a foreign film. I'm not sure if it's Italian or seems. Let's see what she's in. No, she's
Yeah,
mostly
figured.
just in kind
Okay.
of foreign movies, but she does look kind of familiar. I agree.
Yeah.
So I don't really have
Hmm.
much of an opinion on that
I
movie
would.
because I haven't seen it. I haven't heard of it.
No.
This next one's kind
Nope.
of similar. I have heard of this one. We say Nickel Boys. I've seen people reviewing it. I haven't really read the reviews, but it's a new American masterpiece apparently. So I mean,
Wow.
it's up for Best Picture, which
Yeah.
it does bring me to something else, which is that this year, and I've heard people talking about this too, like people who are more in the know about the industry. This year is actually a low like a low year. There was a
I
lot
can
of
feel it.
yeah. There were a lot of movies that were greenlit to be come out this year that just got pushed back or
Oh,
got
okay.
got released early and was it came out last year, like all kinds of stuff. So it's slim pickings, which is allowing some of these weirder movies to come in,
Yeah.
which is actually kind of a good
Fine.
thing in some ways because you have movies like The Substance,
I love
which
that poster, by the way.
it's a great poster. And
It
if
is.
I know you
The
just recently saw the
earring.
movie, so
I
you
watched
know,
it last night. The
yeah,
earring, the eyes, obviously. I mean, there's so much good. Even the lipstick, I mean,
yeah,
is
it's a good
notable.
poster. You know, I
It's a
love my
great
posters.
poster.
But
Yep.
so it's a horror movie, and that's the big deal. It is a horror movie that is up for Best Picture. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often. I think literally the last time it happened was Get Out in 2017.
I was gonna say it. So when after watching it, it really reminds me of Black Swan as well,
That makes sense for sure. It
from an
kind of,
Oscar standpoint.
and
And I mean, in the sense of like trying to be. I mean, there's a lot of similar themes too, actually.
I would say Black Swan may even be a better version of this movie.
Oh, I would agree with that. Actually, I would too.
So now that you've seen it, yeah, if anyone's listened to my roundup, you heard
Yeah.
my thoughts on it. But what do you think?
Yeah. What was your rating? Like a 6.8?
It was a
wasn't
6. I think it was a 6 out of 10. But
Okay. I'm a little higher. I would say probably a 7.5 or 8.
sure,
I honestly think the conceptual standpoint, it's a 10. I think the execution is what lacks in some ways. I think there's just some scenes that either drag out a little long
Yes.
or are unnecessary.
Yes.
And I know it's a horror film, so we can have movies that have crazy shit. I like the ending. I mean,
yeah,
now I will say like maybe it lasted a little long, and
Yeah.
but like I'm okay with the way that it had. I was talking to somebody about how it has the Carrie feeling
yeah.
to it.
Oh,
right?
very much a Carrie
And that's
call
fine.
callback.
That's cool. I'm good with
Yeah.
that. Like that's all good. But like, I just felt like some of the execution wasn't there in certain scenes where it's like, oh, conceptually, this is great. I mean, it's another Hollywood loves Hollywood plastic.
Yes.
Health, like, oh, how can I still look young, and the Botox and the plastic
Yeah.
surgery, all of that has those. I mean, there's feelings of all of that in this movie, and that is a great concept, a great topic. But did they completely execute it the way they should have or could have? I don't know. I don't think so.
What's crazy about
Is that
this
kinda what
movie?
you're thinking?
Yeah. So what's crazy about this movie is if you read some of the reviews, people are thinking about this movie way too much. They think that everything means
Sure.
something, and it's like they're trying to make it the new Shining or something. And I'm like,
Which
look,
is, I mean, it is a testament that it has a good vibe, like in terms
Yeah.
of like people want to invest. Kind of, it's funny because it reminds me of Dune, how is he the Messiah or is he not? And then once they
Right.
start having it in their head that he is, anything he does pertains to the Messiah.
it's a
kinda like
self-fulfilling
this.
prophecy.
Exactly. So like
Yeah.
it means it's good in a way. But
That's
you're
a good
right.
point.
But you're right. I don't think everything does at the same time.
Or it does mean stuff. Like there are things that they point that I've read in reviews, like at the ending,
Okay.
her spraying everybody with her own gore and stuff like that is like this represents her showing Hollywood their own true face, their own mess, their own stuff like that. It's like, yeah, sure. But it's just like, it's kind of old hat. I mean, like you said, we've seen this. It's the plastic, the people like feeling like the impossible beauty standards, stuff like that. It's been said. Now it is a woman director,
Sure.
so I'll appreciate that. and I really like her last film, or one of her last films, Revenge. I gave that a 9 out of 10. Love that movie. And there's a lot of similarities as far as the style goes. It is very stylistic. It is pretty sexual too, but it's like, I just like that. It was just a little bit better. It was a revenge thriller in like its purest form, which was like, it's literally called Revenge. So, but anyway, in this one of my issues too was that she gets developed really quickly. Like there wasn't enough development in Demi Moore's like actual character. She just kind of like and maybe it is a testament to the fact that we understand that concept pretty easily in our society. But she just like, I didn't care enough at the beginning about her plight. You're right. She just kind of was like, I'm freaking out. And so the concept gets set up really fast. Like, you know what's happening like within the first like 10, 15 minutes. And then it just, you sit on the concept for the next like hour and a half. And then there's a final act.
I know. And I mean, you're so spot on with that, because there's one scene where she gets fired. And then she goes right to it. Like, she hears about it, and you know, like, there's no like self-degradation parts. Like, there's no anything. I mean, there's quick, subtle, or not subtle, but quick scenes where she's looking at the poster board or the board,
right?
And there's just like real quick things. But you're absolutely right. It is very fast paced. And what's crazy about that is it's 2 hours and 24 minutes.
It's almost 2.5 hours.
And there's like no plot development with her at the beginning, or character development.
That's what I mean. Like, if you just moved it around a little bit so that we cared more about her, so whenever that stuff happened, it would be better. You know, I didn't hate the movie. I think from a technical standpoint, it was actually very impressive. The body horror, the practical effects was really good. I really did like the vibe was cool. It was a good, it had a cool style. It was definitely unique. And also when she gets really weird and she's like in her yellow coat and running down the street going to get her little pot, I just thought this as one of those like WTF moments. I thought it was just really funny. Like, the yellow coat, it was kind of iconic. There's some iconic parts to it for sure.
I agree. I mean, what's interesting is I think there's some iconic parts that we don't talk about normally that are kind of unique. And then there was some parts where I felt like they were trying to hit every horror button they could.
Yeah.
Like The Shining spewing at the end. Yeah, The Shining.
There was the Shining scene where she's like knocking at the door, and then there's also the hallways and covered in blood.
Is so Shining. And then there's so many of those. I took note of a few that I'm forgetting now, but it's like, oh well, they did that. I mean, it felt like
a little too
not
much
a copycat, but a little too much. Like, the pulling of the teeth. Like, check, we did the pulling of the teeth. Oh, we had the ear fall. Like, just like different things that like are disgusting in there. Oh, we had the person gasping for breath, the other face, which I did like. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
But like, you could hear the cringiness of her trying to gasp for air. Like, any uncomfortable thing you've seen in a horror movie was in this movie.
It was a collection of tropes, but I guess
and just
you could see
it's
why
like
people
Cabin
like
Fever,
it,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like, it's Cabin Fever.
Yeah.
Which is like a 7. You know what I mean? Like, it's entertaining, a good movie, and there's good concepts, but. I can't say it's best picture worthy.
Yeah, I definitely think it's cool that a horror movie is getting recognized.
Oh, it's awesome.
And as we'll see here in these next few kind of categories, there are some horror movies that are getting some love as well. So this is the first year in a while that horror movies have gotten some love from the Academy, and maybe it is because it's kind of slim pickings. Because the Academy obviously they do not want to pick horror, because if they did, then they would have given Mia Goth Best Actress for Pearl a couple years ago. But that's just, I've never been so upset in my life. But so the last movie is Wicked, of course, which I haven't seen yet.
No.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it either, and it's my second on my list that I wanted to see. I actually tried to rent it with my kids yesterday, and they didn't. We watched a trailer to this and Return of Jafar, and that's what they went with. I'm like, damn, you guys, I didn't want to pay $20 to watch it on the couch,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I need to see it. I saw the Broadway show.
Right.
I know all the songs. I
Yeah.
like musicals, so
Yeah.
I think it'll be cool to see on screen. So yeah, that one I
Yeah.
haven't seen, but I really want to. Did you say you haven't either?
I haven't seen it, but I did just so happen to be in London when it was really big at like back in the day, and I got to see
Okay.
it at I don't know I wish I knew more about theater stuff, but I was with a big group and we went to go see it in like the
Oh,
London version of
oh
Broadway.
yeah. I mean,
And
that's right. That's huge.
it was it was awesome and it was really cool and but it was like literally like 14 years ago now, so I like don't remember much of the movie other than the goat teacher, and then I
Yeah.
remember the
Yeah.
Defying Gravity song because like right before Act 1 ends and
Of
they sing
course.
Defying
Yep.
Gravity, I just remember my mind being like, whoa, because they're so good. The singing is so amazing. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they're hitting registers that I'm like, how is that even humanly possible? That is insane. So
Right.
I'm into it, and I've heard that Ariana Grande in particular really killed it as Glinda. I always say it wrong.
Yeah.
Glinda, right? Yeah.
Yeah. She's
So
the Good Witch. Yep.
is she up for it? Well, we'll see. Let's go. Let's get
She
into
is.
it.
She
Yeah.
is up for supporting.
So, speaking of which, I know we spent all this time.
Yeah.
Now that we've broken out on this time,
Yeah,
broken
the other
everything
ones
down
will
for
go
Best Picture.
fast.
Yeah, we'll go
Yeah.
through these. Lead actor. So you were talking about who is it? Oh, Ralph Fiennes maybe getting it. But honestly,
Yeah.
after watching The Brutalist, I'm like
Oh,
Adrian
okay.
Brody is the top
Really?
contender
Cool.
to me.
Now he's won before, correct?
Yes. So
For
this
the
is actually
pianist.
yes, this is a really interesting kind of dichotomy here because he beat out Daniel Day-Lewis, who was definitely probably going to win for Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York, but
Yep.
the pianist came out and Adrian Brody killed it, and he was the youngest person, I think, at 29 years old to win Best Actor.
Oh, I see
and
where you're going with this.
so now Timothy Chalamet is 29 years old and may
Oh,
even be
okay.
a little bit younger. And
Yeah.
so if he beats out Adrian Brody, then he will do the same thing basically, which is really interesting. But I
Yeah.
haven't seen The Complete Unknown yet, so I can't say. But so
No,
far,
I
my
wanna
money's
s-
on Adrian Brody.
I know. I want to see him play Bob Dylan so bad.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I love Bob Dylan growing up. Obviously, he's such a entertaining musician.
Right.
Just
Very
Again,
classic.
as a impressionable kid, you read J.D. Salinger, you listen to Bob Dylan, you
Right.
get all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So like,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really excited about that, and Chalamet is a perfect cast for that. So it wouldn't surprise me, but since I haven't seen all these, I was really impressed by Ray Fiennes.
Yeah. So that actually was really interesting when you said you think he could get it, because now I'm like, ooh, I need to watch Conclave
Yeah,
because
he's the
if you
best
say
part
he's
of the movie, to be honest.
I do love Ray Fiennes. He's like definitely one of those, like, I think now he's starting to get the recognition, but he's been around for so long
Finally.
and he's always been so good. I'll never
Yep.
he is seared into my brain when I was in I think it was early high school, and I watched Schindler's List.
Oh yeah, of course.
His role in Schindler's List is so haunting that I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
forgot him. I was like, that guy. That's the guy from
Yep.
Schindler's List. That's that
Yep.
guy. And he's always, and
sure.
of course he's Voldemort, but that I thought of him
And-
there first and then Voldemort, I guess.
And Red Dragon, right? And
Yeah, Red Dragon. Mm-hmm.
And the Hannibal Lecter series.
Yeah. And then he's in James Bond. He's a pretty major
Oh,
character
yeah.
in those
That's right.
too. So he's in a million movies. He's so good and all of English Patient. I mean, there's like so many big movies from back in the day.
Yep.
So I think maybe the younger audience is starting to be like, oh, Ray Fiennes. He had two movies this year. He was in The Return, which was like that take on the
that's
Odyssey.
right.
Which
Yeah.
it kind of came out late. I think that's why people weren't talking about it too much. But from everything I've heard, people really like it. So Sebastian Stan, interesting here because he could have been up for two because Different Man was another movie he came out with, which I almost did for the horror thriller because it is kind of said as being a thriller, but it's a movie about him
interesting.
changing his face. His face gets messed up and he has surgery or something. I can't remember. Or I think his face is always messed up and then he gets surgery and he looks like Sebastian Stan. But apparently it's one of his best roles he's ever done. And he didn't even get
Okay.
an Oscar, but now he's up for doing a Trump impression.
President.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen some of his impressions and he looks like he does pretty good. But I just would imagine that he would have gotten it for the other movie because I want to say that he won a Golden Globe for A Different Man. Like he
Really?
won.
For the drama?
Yeah. What? I gotta
Huh.
look that up.
Yeah. I haven't seen Sing Sing, but didn't that come out a few years ago or something?
Dude, so yeah, I don't
That's
know
got a
what.
weird story.
So the movie says it comes out. It says on IMDb that it came out in 2023, but there's always some
Yeah.
weird stuff with that. There's a lot of movies like that that come out. They're released at
Same with
different
Toxic
times in different
Avenger.
places. Yeah, yeah.
If you look at Toxic Avenger on IMDb, it says
1984.
2023.
Oh,
I
2023.
was like,
Right.
what? I was like, I don't understand. Is this the one that we're talking about today?
And what it could have done, what it could have been too, is they had private screenings or early screenings, and then
Oh,
they cut the movie or
probably.
they pulled it or something, and then they're like
Probably.
gonna work on it, do reshoots, do
Re-edit.
something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff happens all the time. Obviously, it got it because it's in here, Sing Sing. So I
Right.
guess that's
Right.
fine. But I agree. Sometimes they're weird with that. Like last year, the Iron Claw, that movie. There was some funky stuff with that, and I think that's one of the reasons why it missed award
it
season.
came out. Yeah, it came out at a really weird time. Man, talk about a movie I love. That's such a good movie.
I bet you love that movie. Now I haven't seen it
Yep.
actually, but I know what it's
Oh,
about,
it's great.
and yeah, I could definitely see you liking
Great
that movie.
wrestling movie. Yep.
Oh, so okay, so yeah, Colman Domingo, really interesting though. I haven't really seen many of the movies he's been in, but he has. This is like the second time at least, maybe even in a row that he's been up for a nom. He had one last year. I can't remember what the movie was. So he's killing it right now, and I just haven't really seen his movies. So I'm definitely interested to see Sing Sing and see where it goes. But I know it's about like a theater troupe in prison or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's a kind of a fun idea there.
Yeah, interesting. Almost like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Right. Which, God, I love that movie. Lead actress, Cynthia Erivo, of course, for Wicked. I've heard she does great, so that's great. She's been up before, I think, when she did, what's her name? Oh my God. The Runaway Slave, the Underground Railroad. She played
Is it? Oh, Harriet Tubman?
Harriet Tubman. Jesus. She was in Harriet. So she was up for that.
I haven't seen
and
the
then,
movie, but I know the reference.
Yeah. Thank you. That's 8th grade social studies coming in clutch there. Carla Sofia Gascon, that's the one that is Amelia Perez, and it is the first trans woman to ever be nominated.
Cool.
Which I think is great, but I know that there's going to be some people that are annoyed by that because there's the classic issue, which I'm not touching it because it's too complicated.
Nah.
And I'm not a woman. But there's the classic thing of like, if she wins, then like, are you taking it away from women? I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
but you
not
are a
touching
woman.
it.
I don't know. Okay, so
Yeah,
Mackie
no,
Madison
not worth
with Honora, she did great in that movie. I've seen that one. I didn't like the movie too much, but I did think that she was amazing in it. I mean, we can definitely talk about the movie later when we have more time, but we're running out of time, so we can move on. But I didn't love the movie, but I did like her in it, so I think she could do it. I honestly think she could do it from what I've seen.
I was say I'm thinking Demi Moore is gonna win.
Which I'm just like, she did great, and it was a
Yeah.
comeback, and I get that it's a
Yeah.
good story. I feel like it's
Yeah.
a better story than her performance was. Not that she did a bad job. It's just
Sure.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
think everyone wants her to win because she's never won anything, I don't think, and
Sure. No, I doubt it.
and she's just like a legacy actress, you know.
Oh well, that's kind of what the Oscars are. Let's be honest.
Right.
A lot
Sometimes,
of times, not
for sure,
always.
yeah.
but
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of times. And it is cool again to see again the Carrie resemblance. So Sissy Spacek was nominated for Best Actress, believe it or not, all the way back in '77.
Oh, was that for
Carrie?
Wow,
She
that's
was,
amazing.
Yeah, back in the '70s for a horror movie. That same year was Rocky, Talia Shire, but the winner was Faye Dunaway for Network. But anyways,
Oh, right.
I thought that was surprising that even back then a horror movie had some sort of love from the Oscars. But I don't know. My gut says that Demi Moore is going to win. I really liked her performance.
Yeah, I mean, she
just
she
'cause-
definitely did a good job. It's, for sure.
Yeah, for her, and if you see
For
most
her,
of
it was
her
very
movies,
different.
She leaned,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. She really leaned into the part, and I think that's probably all you can ask for. Because like
Yeah,
most of the movies she's in, it's totally opposite of what she did there. So from that standpoint, I thought she did great.
You know what movie of hers I really liked when I was growing up? G.I. Jane. I'm not saying I don't know if it holds up, but I just remember liking it as a kid. I thought it was a good movie. You know?
Yeah, there's a few good movies that she was in for sure.
But
I'll shout out St. Elmo's Fire.
Right, yeah, that has a stat cast, right? Like it's like
that's
pretty much
a Brat Pack, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much everybody's in that movie. I haven't seen that one, but interesting enough, on IMDb, it's got like the critic score is terrible. It's in the red. I don't know why.
Not surprising. No,
really? Okay.
It's like a lower Brat Pack, but I'm a sucker for him. So
yeah, of course. I mean, it's a famous movie, and I'm sure it made tons of money. Speaking of which, I did want to point out that Wicked is still in theaters, and it has made so much money. So the budget was $150 million, and it has made $717 million gross. Man. So it's doing pretty good. It's working its way up to $1 billion.
Well, I mean, think about it from a Broadway standpoint.
Right.
It was on Broadway forever. I mean, it still is, and so like, yeah, they can just keep that running like Titanic style.
Yeah,
which sucks because if you're trying to watch it on Peak, I think NBC owns the rights or Universal, so like it'll come out on Peacock in maybe a year. So I'm like, dang it, I gotta rent it. I gotta see it. So I have a feeling it won't be out.
For a long time.
Then. Yeah,
and it was their biggest like single investment into one franchise, like in Universal history, because they also paid for the second part already. Like they already invested for the second part when they invested for the first one. So it was the biggest just money dump that Universal's ever done in their history. So far it's paying off.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And then we have Fernando Torres for I'm Still Here. We don't know anything about that movie, so
no.
A lot of times now, I think Emilia Perez is maybe a little bit of an exception, but a lot of times there is like a foreign movie that is kind of thrown in there as not. I don't even know if it's not because it doesn't deserve there. If anything, there's probably more foreign films that deserve to be up here.
Sure.
But they usually at least pick one foreign film to kind of throw around, and I'm sure it's good. We just haven't seen it.
Yep.
Supporting role. Oh, you said you saw A Real Pain, right?
Yeah, that's. So I didn't realize Edward Norton was in A Complete Unknown. Wow. Okay.
He's playing Woody Guthrie.
Oh, no way. Okay. Yeah. Man, even more reason. I tried to stay away from I try to stay away from trailers because they all give away the movie.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But yes. So Kieran Culkin, I absolutely love him. So I mean,
he's
obviously
great.
from was the show that
Succession.
Succession. Loved him in Succession. He's probably the best character.
Right.
And so he kind of has that same vibe in A Real Pain, but in a more compelling way. Because obviously everyone in Succession you love to hate.
Right.
In this case, you kind of feel bad for him in some ways.
Yeah.
He kills it. I mean, I don't know the other roles, so I can't. Right. And I like Guy Pearce. I like Jeremy Strong, and I also like Edward Norton. So
Jeremy Strong too, isn't he? He's in Succession too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun.
That's a tough supporting actor. I mean, that's just as hard as any of the other categories. I would say this is
honestly you're
to pick.
You're a Borisov. His character in Lenora was the best character. Like he was. That
wow.
I was like kind of like, what's with this movie? I don't know if I like it. And then his character Igor shows up, and I was like, I'm intrigued. Like immediately, I liked him, and he carried the movie to me. Now, of course, acting wise, Nora herself, Mikey Madsen, she did great. So like she is good too, but her character, frankly, she yells a lot and she's annoying. And it's the point of the movie is to be really loud and raucous and chaotic and la la la. But his character is his character is the exact opposite. His character is very chill and cool and just kind of like But his acting is so good with that, though. It's very subtle acting. It's very like the kind of acting that the Academy likes, I would say. If it's not like big and boisterous, it has to be small and contained.
Yeah,
it's one or the other. They like that.
Sure.
And Guy Pearce kills it in The Brutalist. It's great to see him.
This is a cool category. Then this might be one of my favorite categories.
Yeah, for sure. And his character is critical to the movie. I mean, it's him and Adrian Brody, which is why they're up for it, obviously. But them two together is what makes that movie so incredible. So 100% into that. And I went through, actually, when I was younger, I used to go through big actor kicks. That's like really how I did stuff. And so I went through a huge Guy Pearce like kick, and then I went through a massive Adrian Brody kick. For some reason, I was like 11 or 12 whenever The Jacket came out.
I remember The Jacket.
Yeah, and I was like, I like Adrian Brody, and so I rented like all his movies from the library. Like Detachment was like such a good movie, and then of course The Pianist, and like I was just like Adrian Brody brained for like
Angels in the Outfield.
Oh, is he in that?
Yeah, he's one of the. I think he's one of the outfielders, but he's
amazing.
A baseball player for the Angels.
Oh my God, that is so funny. There's a lot of fun facts about him.
Oh yeah, it's funny you mentioned The Jacket. When it checks out that you were about 11 because I was like, I think junior in high school. So the girl I dated really liked that movie. So I don't remember anything about the movie.
Yeah, of course.
It was a movie.
Yeah, remembering the movie, it was kind of silly, but it is like,
I'm sure.
I love those kind of ideas.
It was like time travel or something.
Yeah, he's time traveling in a straitjacket in a morgue, and it makes him time travel because, of course, it does. Yeah. So it makes no sense, but I just really liked it, and he's one of those guys he has peaks and valleys where he'll like Adrian Brody will be in some really high profile movies and then he'll drop off. And I've seen some Adrian Brody movies that were absolute trash, where it's just like, this is obviously a very low B movie, and why'd you say yes to this? So he's like kind of a less crazy Nick Cage in that way, where he'll just like go down and then he'll resurface, and this is a big resurface for sure.
Cool.
But yeah, so I love this category. And we haven't seen Edward Norton as Woody Guthrie, but he's obviously an incredible actor, so I'm sure he kills it.
Yep.
Actress supporting role, complete unknown. Once again, we don't know. Ariana Grande, we talked about her. Felicity Jones. Oh, I didn't know if she was up or not. I said that it was them two, but honestly, she carries the movie. She doesn't come in until halfway through, but she's like, wow. I only really remember her from like the Star Wars movie. Was it Rogue One?
Yeah, Rogue One.
Yeah, she was great in that, but that's really all I really ever remember seeing her in. And she is like a force in The Brutalists. So I really think she could win. Zoe Saldana did a great job in Lily Perez, I will say. It's a weird character, but she's a prominent character. I don't think she's going to win, though. Isabella Rossellini.
Very shocking. Or not shocking, but I didn't realize. Okay, so Isabella Rossellini is up for Best Actress. Interesting. Okay.
And it's her first nomination, which is crazy because she's a very legendary actress. And her mother is. I didn't realize this until recently. I did my Ingrid Bergman theme recently.
That's right.
Her mother is Ingrid Bergman. I was like, I did not know that at all. Yes, that's her mother.
Didn't know that. Wow.
Totally blew my mind. And so one of Ingrid Bergman's big roles was in the Bell Tower movie about the Spanish Civil War, where she plays a nun. And Isabella Rossellini is playing a nun in this one. Yeah, super full circle. She's really cool.
She's not in it a ton. I will be honest. I will say that I have a feeling she won't touch this guy.
Once again, this is probably her getting a bone thrown to her. I mean,
it's my gut.
Her in Blue Velvet, that's the movie I think of when I think of Isabella Rossellini.
100%.
She's incredible in that film. I don't know how I don't know if they got any noms at the time, but that's her. When I think of her, I think of that movie. So I'm really excited to see what we come up with this one. I really think Felicity Jones has probably got it in the bag from what I've seen, from the ones I've seen.
I wouldn't. Yeah. Real quick, I wouldn't be surprised if Ariana Grande, because of the star factor.
Yeah.
Because didn't Lady Gaga win? I can't remember if she actually won. She was up for it.
For Star is Born?
Yeah, I don't know if she actually won.
I don't think she won. I think she was up for it, but I don't think she won. I could be wrong on that.
It has that same feel.
Yeah, we could do a fact check on that later. But Best Director, this one's interesting. And I will say this was my first sad. And that's we haven't even talked about any upsets or anything like that, but obviously we're kind of running low on time. I know there's so much to talk about. We're like, we'll just quickly go through. So I think that this is where my first big upset is. Although I would say Lily Rose Depp for Nosferatu is kind of a bit of an upset for me on the Best Actress, because she really just she kills it, and her physical acting is really good. I mean, there's scenes of her shaking and contorting and doing all kinds of crazy stuff on top of some very operatic or like Shakespearean acting, and maybe it was too Shakespearean. Like maybe the Academy thought that it was too overacting, but it was definitely what she was told to do, and her screen presence was just incredible. And I think too, for me, I'm not going to go too much into the Nosferatu stuff, but it's just the character that she played, Ellen, is always like the worst character in that movie, in that story. And it actually was compelling in this movie. It was written better. She plays a better, more developed character. She's much more integral. She's always integral to the story, but she's usually like more damsel-y and distressy. And this one, she kind of has a little bit more agency. She's more of a real fleshed out character, and really, she's the reason why everything happens to begin with. I mean, she's more of an active participant in the situation. So, so her acting and then her character was just better. I don't know. I thought she would probably get it, but. Or at least a nomination. And of course, Bill Skarsgård, I mean, talk about transformation. I mean, the orders got on up, that's crazy. I mean, he literally had to train with an opera singer to lower his voice like 2 octaves. I mean, when you're doing that kind of stuff, you think that you get some love, but once again, it's a horror movie.
Shocking. Also, my biggest surprise that I saw in here was there's no love for Furiosa. And I don't think it's necessarily a best picture.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
Mad Max was up for best picture and a million other Oscars. I thought this was almost as good. I mean, I could have seen a best director maybe or something.
Oh, definitely best director. Definitely best director. And best production design, stuff like that. I mean,
absolutely. It's a great theater movie, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
See it in theaters, the sound, I could have seen something. I don't think it's up for anything, is it?
That is, I think that might be the biggest snub of the year, honestly, because it is something that should get something.
Yeah,
especially considering the scale and the quality.
Well, that's what. Like, I mean, I know we see a lot of movies that are not scalable enough to be on this level of Oscar, and that's why I love the Oscars. Is it's a different ball game, and it's kind of like watching WWE, where you're watching all the big heavyweights, all the no names. But when you see some of these backyard wrestlers, some of them are really, really good, but they're just not. They're not on that scalable level. Same thing here. But another one that surprised me was Romulus.
I know.
I mean, I think the actress was amazing. She could have been up for Best Actor.
She's
almost
huge
like her
right now.
Better than maybe any of those. I mean, I haven't seen all of them, but But she's so good in that. From a director standpoint,
she was good in Civil War too. She was like, she really killed all the roles that she was in this year and didn't get any love. But she's young, she's gonna have her time, for sure. But I agree. True. I think from a production standpoint or cinematography, at least, I think that was we'll get into cinematography here in a second. But I thought Alien Romulus definitely should have gotten a cinematography nom.
Those were two that were female driven that I thought were amazing, that were scalable on those high end. That didn't get any touch or any love from the Oscars. Kind of surprised. It was weird seeing some of the movies that took all these noms away from everybody else. Yeah.
See, that's the thing. It almost seemed like with the James Mangold in particular, right? With The Complete Unknown. I haven't seen it, but it's a movie. It's a music biopic. Like, I don't know. I just feel like the director, like Brad Corbet, Sean Baker, even Coraline Farragut. I mean, it's cool to see a woman director on here. Her directing, which I don't know. I don't think she should get it because basically my biggest issue with the movie is the directing in some ways, the pace of the movie. I mean, it just wasn't right. If you were a good director, you'd be able to cut that out and fix it. So that's, I guess, but I do like her as a director because Revenge was so good and her style is very unique. So fair enough. Absolutely. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think that like even Emilia Perez, like should the director be getting that? I don't think so. I think that other movies, Fede Alvarez should be on there. Robert Eggers, when you look at all the stuff that he did for Nosferatu, he's a shoo-in. Like he's a shoe-in. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, and we're gonna get to it in probably the next one. Yes, finally I got it on there. Nosferatu, let's go. If
And
it didn't get
both of those.
yeah, if it didn't get cinematography as a nom, I was gonna like actually boycott. Because here's the thing, he
Yeah.
has been denied since The Witch. Like, I mean, and honestly, The Lighthouse. Like, The Lighthouse is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. It's like the camera is a character. It really threads throughout the whole movie. It's very metaphorical in the way that it moves. I mean, everything about that movie, cinematography is what drives it. And it's like, how did you get a nomination for this? And then The Northman, production design. It has been known as like, it is like famously at this point the most historically accurate Scandinavian film of all time. I mean, they recreated entire villages. I mean, the Viking raids that they did was like meticulously researched. I mean, the production design of that movie is incredible, and that movie got 0 Oscars.
Nuts.
So he deserves. It's about time, and so he actually got a few this time. And while I would have loved to have seen Best Director, I would have loved seeing more maybe personal awards like the actors and actresses. Really, what makes his movies shine more than anything is the background stuff.
Yep.
It's the cinematography, it's the production design, it's the hair and makeup, it's the costumes. That is what makes those movies so good. So it makes sense that those are the ones that he's up for. The Brutalist also makes sense for cinematography. It's incredibly well done. It has a really good way of mixing epic scale with an immigrant story with like weird artistic stuff too. It's like also really like kind of almost avant-garde in some of its cinematography. The story is pretty straightforward, but the way that it's filmed, and he's an architect of modern art, like modern buildings before modern buildings were really being made. So it's kind of like it is really pushing the bounds of creativity, and so obviously they're trying to thread that into the cinematography as well. So definitely deserves to be on there. Emilia Perez,
Yeah,
I don't know.
So weird, and I don't know Maria.
It is good cinematography in some ways because it's such a crazy movie, and to be able to thread the way that they threaded the musical stuff back into the drama, and like you'll just be like, there's one where she goes into a closet and all of a sudden they're in a black space with all these faces everywhere, and like it's just like kind of some cool stuff where it's pretty unique. It's such a weird movie to try to thread together that I would almost say like for editing it should win, because like to try to edit that movie together is just pretty wild.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on. Production design, once again, I think Nosferatu should definitely. I think it should get it 100%. Doom Part 2, maybe visual effects for Doom Part 2. I know they actually did a lot of practical stuff. Denis Villeneuve had said that the scene at the beginning, you've seen it by this point, I'm sure, if you saw the first half, the scene where he rides the worm, he said it was the single most challenging shot he's ever done in his entire life. And apparently it took weeks to do.
Really?
Because they're doing everything practical, and he's also using natural light. Okay. He only wanted to use natural light. They're on location in the sand dunes. I mean, they're like in the heat dealing with all that stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. So definitely with production design, I could see Dune winning.
I could see Wicked.
It's interesting because there's a lot of CGI, but is there more practical than you think?
Well, I'm just assuming based on, creating the world of Oz is always going to get that award. I'm not saying it would win, but I do see why, because that's the sticking point, right?
Yeah.
Like we built Oz, the imagination, let it go wild. I don't know.
That's fair. I do think now that you say that, I did hear somewhere that they actually did go more practical, and they wanted to do more natural lighting. I heard about that too. So they did. I think there is, obviously I've seen from the trailers there's tons of CGI, but I think that there is
for sure.
There is some practical sets and everything. Probably at the school and stuff like that. There's probably going to be tons of practical sets, which is impressive. And what about Conclave? It's all. It's at the Vatican.
I would say it's Oscar bait. It is
okay.
the Vatican. It's Oscar bait.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's nothing special.
Hair and makeup. Amelia Perez, I actually think they could win for this one. That would make sense. The Substance is actually really good hair and makeup.
I'm going with the Substance just based on. I mean, yeah, the way they made Demi Moore look by the end of that movie.
Oh my god,
almost unimaginable for
it's wild,
so attractive.
Yeah, and the looks are iconic, even from Margaret Qualley's like that leotard. You know, it's just like burned into your brain. And the yellow,
so funny on purpose.
The yellow jacket too it runs itself throughout the movie, which I guess that's costume. It's not hair and makeup, but the looks in that movie I can definitely see it winning because that's kind of part of the point of the movie. Exactly. Nosferatu though too. I mean, God, the period, it just so period specific. It's just when you're so hyper accurate, hair and makeup and costumes in a period piece that is so hyper accurate usually is got a edge, I think, in the running. So, and A Different Man, here it is, finally gets something. So I'm guessing that's because he has his face is all distorted, so they had to make okay. So there's like kind of like the whale or some of the late prosthetics is where the makeup comes from, which is why the Substance is probably going to win. Oh, but actually Nosferatu, the actual character design of Count Orlok himself is wild. So definitely that's going to be an interesting one to watch for sure. Yeah. Costume design, Gladiator 2 got on there, which is cool. I definitely think Nosferatu should win this, though. The costume design was just incredible. Practical production design, cinematography, costume design, at least. I'm giving a Nosferatu.
Costume design for Conclave.
Yeah,
get out of here.
Those look like very real robes. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. What an abstract thought.
Yeah. Original score. Brutalist had really good score. I will say that. Wicked.
Have a feeling. What? Oh, actually, okay. It might be a 2-horse race. All right, Amelia Perez or Wicked.
Right. That is one of the interesting things too. Is that this is the first time in a while that musicals have been big. There's 2 big musicals. I mean, Wicked is up for 10, and Amelia Perez is up for 13. So they're the 2 biggest contenders of the whole Oscars.
Last time a musical, was it La
La Land? Yeah, and then there was that whole fiasco with that where they read it out the wrong one, and well, I think was that Warren Beatty? Poor Warren Beatty.
Yeah, I think La La Land was better in my opinion, but I was like, oh, awesome, and then they were like, oh no, just kidding. Like, oops. Damn, really? Yeah. Oops. I was like, oh, I liked La La Land better, but whatever. Right. So I have heard true. There's 2 big ones.
It's an interesting year this year for sure, and one of the good things too is that last year was an exception as well, but the years before that for a while it's just like the most depressing movie wins. Because I've been doing this with my friends.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, with my friends in a little movie club that we have. We watch all the Oscar movies every year, and we've been doing that for like almost 5 years now. So. Cool. Seeing the trajectory is like, oh my God, like the last 2 years have been such a breath of fresh air. They're actually Wicked. I mean, there's actually like kind of lighthearted movies that are up for Best Picture. It's nice. And the Wild Robot, I've heard really good things about that movie. I mean, I
haven't seen it.
I
need to watch it with my kids. But
I don't watch a lot of animated movies like that, but I mean, I'm sure it's great. Original song. I was trying because I saw this before I watched Amelia Perez, and I couldn't tell you what song El Mal was, but she's in 2. She has 2. Also, Mi Camino.
Wow, yeah.
So,
what's the Never Too Late like?
So there's a documentary. Elton John came out with the documentary this year, and that he made a song for the documentary.
Okay. Man,
so that one actually might win from what I've heard. I've heard people saying it might win, but
I mean that wouldn't be the first time, right?
Yeah, I could see Amelia Perez, Circle of Life from Lion King. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very good. That's a good memory there. I forgot about all that. But yeah, I could see Amelia Perez is up for 2. So honestly, like her chances are a little bit. I say her like it's like she's a movie, but that movie is.
Or is it Split?
Yeah, right.
Split your chances.
The Manitas is her former person. Oh, so I split these up a little bit. So I'm trying to see how can we get out of the way. But anyway, so we have the Wild Robots for sound, Wicked, Amelia Perez. Let me see if I can find the. Oh no, that's it. Okay, we're good.
Oh, we got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. A little shout out there. All right.
Which makes sense
Oh,
because
and
those,
Romulans.
yeah, the Planet of the Apes movies had really good effects, and I think they've probably been up for them, or if not won them in the
Oh
past.
yeah, I'm sure.
And interesting here too is that Better Man is up for this, and the team that does the apes from Planet of the Apes did the ape
no
in Better
kidding.
Man. So
Dang, cool.
really, that studio or those animators are up for 2 Oscars this year, which is
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
Wicked interesting because from the CGI I saw in the trailer, it looks pretty terrible. But
Yeah, I think the same thing from what I've seen. It looked corny, cheesy,
Yeah.
noticeable.
so Romulus is interesting to me because one of the things that was so newsworthy when the movie was coming out was how much was practical in that
Yeah.
film. So I feel
Yeah.
like practical effects should have been this, like
I
Alien
know.
Romulus's bag, but it's VFX. But to be fair, the VFX in Romulus
they're
were
great.
amazing. The whole scene
really
where the
good.
space station is slowly falling into the Saturn
so
rings,
good.
basically, is like an asteroid belt, was just mind blowing. It was a spectacle to say the least. I
There's some
definitely think
scenes-
it should win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some scenes in there that are just so noteworthy that
Yeah.
I think it's one of those movies where, as time goes by, I think more and more fond of it. Like
Yeah.
I want to go back and watch it again.
Oh,
now
yeah.
that-
I wanna
now
own
that we're
it.
talking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I own
definitely
all of his
it's one
other
those.
movies. I got Evil Dead remake, and I've got Don't Breathe.
Nice.
So I'm like, give me
Nice.
this one too, because it's just he just doesn't miss. That's like
Yeah.
what I loved about this year is Fede Alvarez and Robert Eggers, 2 directors that literally do not miss. Just coming out with 2 big bangers and just like, all right, this is a great year for me, just for those 2 movies
That's
alone.
fun.
So yeah, Alien Romulus should definitely get that. Sounds, I don't know. I don't really. Obviously, Wicked. The 2 musicals are gonna get sounds.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, and the Complete
I'll
Unknown
go
is
with
a
Dune.
yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I'll go with Dune just based on this actual sound of the movie.
Yes,
is
the actual
incredible.
sound
It's so
design.
intense.
Yeah, they do a really
Yeah.
good job with that, and the first movie was just the same. And I think we're at the end here.
Wow.
Adapted screenplay and original screenplay. So
Okay.
adapted screenplay is interesting. So Amelia Perez is adapted. I didn't even realize that.
Wow. Yeah.
So-
off of what?
Yeah, it must be a book or something. Which is that's very
maybe.
interesting. Or
That's-
maybe a play. It could be a musical, like a
Yeah.
theater musical.
Oh, could be.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. Wicked's not up for adapted screenplay.
I thought that was interesting too. Maybe it's too on the nose or something. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe. And it's a complete unknown. It's a book, right? They
Let me
took it
make
off
sure
of his
that-
biography.
yep. It must be. That's what I was thinking too. It must
there's
be a
like-
biography.
There's like 3 Bob Dylan biographies. There's more than
Yeah.
one.
And there's more than
and-
one biopic too. There's tons of biopics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean they've had the documentary like I'm Not Here
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
and you know they've had so many. So I really like Bob Dylan. That's probably the number 1 movie I want to see, but at the same time like it has been done and
Yeah.
not too long ago.
I think
and
this
then-
is like the most conventional one though. Like the
Oh, yeah.
other the other one I remember
I'm
was
Not Here
really
not conventional
yeah.
at all, right? 8 or 9 different actors play the
yes,
same
Christian
different
Bale
parts.
and even Kate Blanchett was playing Bob
Yeah.
Dylan.
Heath Ledger, right?
Yeah.
I think. So
Pretty
they
much
just took
everybody. Yeah.
different time periods of his life, and which is a great. It's a cool.
It was
concept.
a cool movie. I remember
Yeah.
really liking it.
And then for screenplay, I mean, again, interesting. The substance comes up, right?
Right.
And a real pain. Now
That
I
makes
feel
sense
like-
to me from what I've heard.
Oh
of it.
yeah.
It's
Honestly,
a dialogue-y movie, right?
Yeah, I mean it's Jesse Eisenberg's dialogue. Like, I love-hate relationship with him. Like, I feel like he plays the same character in every movie, but I will say this is by far the most grown-up version of his kind
Oh,
of
good.
character and movie and feelings that come up.
Yeah.
It's the first time it feels like he's actually a person and not a
Yeah.
robot. Like, because when he plays Mark Zuckerberg in Social Network, the whole time I'm like, that's it. He's just a robot.
Yeah, which is
He's
the
playing-
funny because
right?
Mark Zuckerberg is
Oh,
famously
yeah.
a
I mean,
robot.
Again, he plays the part extremely well, but it feels like he's a robot. And this is
Yeah.
probably the first movie where I didn't feel that. So
That's
I'd be
good.
cool with seeing him get some sort of praise. So
Right.
that'd be cool to see.
That seemed like it would be up there for me from what I've heard of A Real Pain.
It was one of the, I would say of all the movies that are in the Oscar talk, it's probably one of my favorites, actually.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I've only heard good stuff, and it just seemed like one of those dialogue movies where it's just really about those two guys and their interactions with each other, and that's just that's always rife for like some good Oscar stuff, especially with screenplay.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for those too.
Yeah,
those are the ones that hit home most.
Yeah, those are the ones
right?
you might remember too.
Yeah, and they extract real emotion. Like I think that's probably one of my biggest things with something like Amelia Perez is I don't have any emotional attachment, connection to any of it, and that's no fault to how the movie plays out. But even something like Nosferatu, there are parts where you're like, oh, like there's real feelings here that I could relate to.
It's very human based, like based on on human nature.
Well, I feel like Amelia Perez is more like a chat GBT. What can I include in today's society that's going to get credit for
get the most critical praise,
yeah, right. And those always rub me the wrong way. And it's not anything to do with the movie or the concept. It's just like all of it in one. I always skip. There are always movies at the Oscars that do get that kind of praise, that it's mainly executed based off of that critical. I mean, they're aware of what they're doing when they're making a movie like that, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I will say there are parts of it that I think are, but when you take in all of a whole, especially once the third act happens, if her character would have had a different end, I think, then maybe I would have been able to connect a little bit more, because I actually do like the idea of I am a new person now. And I'm trying to become a new person, and then having to deal with your old person and being maybe resentful of having to deal with the consequences because you've moved on, but the world, your environment, the consequences of your actions have not moved on, and they're coming back.
Yeah, that's a cool. Yeah,
I like that part, but it doesn't
pay off.
Yes, it doesn't come together enough for it to be something that's deeper. I feel like the ending is more telenovela-y, much more like drug cartel, shootout, bang ending, and it's like
Great Gatsby.
Right, play the Spanish guitar and finish it out, and I'm just like, okay, like you really it's a 2.5 hour movie or something. It's like, or it's an hour and 45. It's almost a 2 hour movie, and I'm like, man, I really wanted to kind of get.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's my biggest problem with Great Gatsby. Like I love that book.
Oh,
but for the first 3/4 of the book, it's all about relationships and feelings, and then of course at the end, then we got him, and then it's just like, okay, that's the way we got to end this. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about with the substance. So many movies have great concepts or great surface level ideas, but not necessarily execute as well as maybe they could have.
And like I talked about in my horror roundup, that was pretty much the kind of motif of the year, was horror movies that had really unique concepts and just couldn't finish it out. Even Longlegs, which had really, everyone really loved Longlegs. At least it had a lot of buzz at the time, and it had the potential. It had the potential of being like a new Silence of the Lambs, which did win Best Picture, a rare horror movie that won Best Picture.
Good point. Good point.
It just didn't stick the landing. The last third, once you figure out, like, it had a lot of mystery, but once you figured out what the thing was, it just took all the wind out of the sails, and it was just like, it's a good movie. Still great vibes, all that kind of stuff. And Nicolas Cage, talk about a snub. I think he actually could have been up for actor for that, because that was one of his best roles for sure. I mean, totally lost himself in that role like crazy. Once again, it's a horror movie, or it's a crime movie, so it's It is very interesting how if that movie would have handled the ending better, I feel like it would have maybe had a Silence of the Lambs moment in the Oscars.
Crazy.
So I think we did it. We did it.
Wow.
A little bit longer than we were expecting. Yeah. We were like 45 minutes and we're out. But there's a lot to get into, and we'll grab, we'll see. We've already said some of our predictions and stuff, and we'll see. We print out a sheet where you can, we'll all the.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
That's really cool. I'll give you the template, and you
Cool.
kind of you square. I think it's like we cross what you think is going to win, and then you can circle what you want to win.
Cool. All right, I'm in.
So
for
sometimes
that.
it's
Yeah.
like I know this one's going to win, but I really want Nosferatu to win.
Yeah, of course. Awesome.
So yeah, I'll
I'm
give that to
down
you.
for
But
that.
thanks for
Cool.
coming on. This is our first episode of the new show, which I still don't know what
thanks,
to call
everybody.
it. Movie news. I don't know.
Something good. Yeah.
We'll figure something out. I've been workshopping it for a
Nice.
while, and I still can't figure it out because you want it to be punchy, but you
Yeah,
don't.
not cheesy.
Right. Like, how do you do that? So, and you also want people to see it in the feed and know what it is.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like,
agreed.
movie news, January. Well, okay, we know what that is,
Yeah. Right.
But yeah.
Cool.
But thanks for coming on, and we'll be
Yeah,
on
thanks.
next month, and then
Yeah, let's do it.
yeah. So just I'm not used to plugging on videos and stuff, but this will be up on my YouTube channel. This will be probably the first video on the YouTube channel. So
Nice.
like and subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and then you can follow me on Film Haven Reviews on Spotify, and I'm also on anywhere else that you get podcasts and everything like that. And hopefully this video should also be up on Spotify as a video, so that'll be cool.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. Yeah, and thanks again for having me. And I'm very excited about this next chapter. There's
Oh yeah.
so much cool movie news to go over where I think that people can latch onto and maybe not have to go and read 10 different
Right.
articles like you do all the time.
Yeah, you just come here.
Yeah, exactly. Just come here and find out what's going on. And the horror thing's pretty cool because then we can kind of go back and watch those. And
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the Oscars. And it's been a couple years since I've really gotten into it again. So this is a cool reinvigoration. So
Oh yeah,
I'm
and then we'll
excited
keep you
about
up.
that.
Well, it's maintenance now. Now we'll just do it every
Yeah,
year.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm pumped. So yeah, and you can check us out at the movie Podium, obviously, as we talked about, anywhere from Instagram to YouTube. And yeah, let's keep this rolling.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Later.